Hi all, it's Thursday again. Seems to be Thursday every week, every day of the week. Feels like that anyway. And today's date is June the 27th. This is the Truth, Honour and Integrity Show. My name's Thomas Williams. Enjoy the show.
I can feel the magic floating in the air. Being with you gets me that way. I watch the sunlight dance across your face, and I've never been this swept away. All my thoughts just seem to settle on the breeze when I'm lying wrapped up in your arms. The whole world just fades away. The only thing I hear is the beating of your heart. And I can feel you breathe, it's watching over me. And suddenly I'm melting into you. There's nothing left to prove. And baby, all we need is just to be caught up in the touch, the slow and steady rush. Baby, isn't that the way that love's supposed to be? I can feel you breathe. In a way, I know my heart is waking up as all the walls come tumbling down. Closer than I've ever felt before. And I know, and you know, there's no need for words right now. And I can feel you breathe, washing over me. And suddenly I'm melting into you. There's nothing left to prove. Baby, all we need is just to be caught up in the touch, the slow and steady rush. And baby, isn't that the way that love's supposed to be? I can feel you breathe. Just breathe. Caught up in the touch, the slow and steady rush. And baby, isn't that the way that love's supposed to be? I can feel you breathe. Just breathe. I can feel the magic floating in the air. Being with you gets me that way.
Just breathe. There's a few who need to just breathe and take a step back. We go into another show packed with information, and a show that will continue to mock the clowns, continue to state our show has mentioned things previously, and continue to mention this was referenced in previous shows, to highlight things that have been covered, and is not an ego issue despite one member's complaint today. And the show will continue to have laughter, lighter clicking, gulping, several oops, when the focus really should be on the information contained, not whether I am allowed to laugh too much in the shows. It's the wrong focus, and it smacks of envy and a lack of inner and shadow work, those complaints. I cannot and will not pamper to the whims of all, clearly not focused as they should be. And the saying, you can't please all of the people all of the time, kind of fits.
But there's one thing that I can do for you, 'cause I'm not like everybody else. What did I say? How did I say? One more time. Like everybody else. And I don't want to live my life like everybody else. And I don't want to be destroyed like everybody else. And I don't want to get a job like everybody else. 'Cause I'm not like everybody else.
Hi all and welcome to another week of the Truth, Honour and Integrity show. That was the Kinks, and I'm not like anybody else. I don't know if that's a plus or a burden at times. But we're not like anybody else either. The listeners, we're different. We've proven that. And because we're different, that makes us targets for people who choose to play games and not address their own issues. So let's get on with the show. Well, it's been another busy week again for me on many fronts, apart from the work with Kim, and there's been a lot of show stuff done this week. Of course, over the weekend we had two shows, The Clowns in Panic and the Crypto Nonsense, and also Holly. That was a really good show, and Holly revealed a lot about herself, and an evening with Thomas, which has proven to be rather popular. Now, next up on that list, on an evening with Thomas this Sunday, is Michael Jacquin, our webmaster extraordinaire, and so look forward to that. I think that will be somewhere around 7:30 Eastern Standard Time. And I've also been invited on, I thought it was James Gilliland, but it's not, it's the Richard Hoagland show. And that has been penciled in for July the 13th, which is a Saturday night at midnight Eastern Standard Time. Yes, you heard that right. Oh dear. To discuss the From Russia with Love series only. Now, I've been busy with the continuation of that series, and I've wrote 90% of part 6 this week. Part 5 is just getting finishing touches also now, and so look forward to them coming out. Also, this coming Sunday I will be on A Circle of White Light show with Alan and Randy, which is always interesting, as you know. So as you can see, I've been kind of busy. And it's kind of why ridiculous comments on social media helps absolutely no one. But on we go with the show. We covered a piece on black reparation money over the slavery, and this continues this week. Not only the black reparation money, but also the continuing Jewish reparation money. You know, it's 70 plus years now, and quite frankly most people who were part of that have moved on already. And this week in Holland they extorted money out of some Dutch rail company for allegedly carrying certain passengers on the rails. And also they're trying to force the Polish government into paying 300 billion in reparations. You know, the Israeli Cohen plan, which is from Russia with Love series in the early 1900s, is still all playing out. Now, the money is one aspect, but the divide and conquer is another. And these same two groups have both had recently high-profile staged attack events that were both fake and proven to be fake also. You know, Mr. Smollett, despite police evidence, still walks free, and it's designed to denigrate one group of people, and yet so few see it. Both of these are programs, and neither are designed for the benefit of the black or the Jewish people. It's only designed to create a race war, and I'm appealing to both communities to not buy into it. They're trying to play us off against each other again. Why? Because they're losing, and badly as well. Talking about faked staged events, I see the paid actor who looks eerily similar to Huma Abedin to me, Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, or better known as AOC, which stands for Agency Operated Clown, and she did her latest acting role of crying into an empty parking lot on camera. You know, the parking lot is symbolic of the number of brain cells she has to me. And like I've said, politics, which means many parasites, is all theatre. It wasn't the last she was in the news. The man with the fake name, Mayor of New York, Bill de Blasio, Wilhelm Jr. is his real name, criticised AOC for saying the Trump administration is housing immigrants in concentration camps. Nice reminder again. They always have to bring that term up. It's a program, and it's a psyche program at the Mexican border. And Mr. de Blasio said, "I respect her greatly and feel very close to her in terms of philosophy. But of course she was wrong. You cannot compare what the Nazis did in the concentration camps." Now other democratic leaders like Pelosi ducked out of the questions. Go figure. That's why AOC's there, so Pelosi doesn't speak, or attempts to anyway. Meanwhile, a certain Israeli Holocaust museum said the freshman congresswoman could use a history lesson. Now, we've had enough of those history lessons. Like nobody else died in that war. We're going off to India next, and a fairly staggering statistic in the middle of it. You know, we think we've got problems in America, and we do, but the Western world pales into insignificance of what's going on in other countries. And in particular for the cotton farmers in India who have been dealing with Monsanto. Now, to begin with, Monsanto illegally began open field trials of its GMO BT cotton, looks like Bitcoin to me, in 1997, and announced it would be selling seeds the following year. In turn, the Indian Supreme Court would not allow the biotech giant to sell seeds until 2002. Since then, over 300,000 Indian farmers have committed suicide. Yes, you heard that right. 300,000. And it's believed many of these suicides were linked to major debts, which they deliberately forced them into, which they did in America, which facilitated the NASARA program. The NASARA is for the farmers of America, not everyone. Incurred by the systematic control of Monsanto and BT cotton. Expensive seeds and the pesticides needed can only be bought from Monsanto. And this is what's going to happen with the marijuana. They don't make things legal without several back doors. Monsanto and Bayer, which is Rothschild, are going to control the whole of the marijuana industry 100%. The Agricultural Ministry of India stated cotton farmers are in deep crisis and shifting to BT cotton, and the spate of farmer suicides in 2011-12 has been particularly severe amongst these BT cotton farmers. And Monsanto's BT cotton seeds have been dubbed the seeds of suicide by residents in India. But now, finally, India is waking up and ready to fight back. The Indian government has begun to promote the use of native varieties of cotton seeds more specific to each area. And in the time that farmers have begun switching back to indigenous seeds, Monsanto has seen a loss of $75 million. Now, leaders like Vandana Shiva are helping farmers to attain native seeds for the cotton they grow, seeds that can be saved and regrown the next year, as opposed to GM seeds, which produces sterile plants and forces the farmers to purchase seeds every year. No change there. They run that program on many levels. So Shiva, an environmental activist in India, began Fibres of Freedom, and in the heart of Monsanto's BT cotton suicide belt in Vid Harbour, we have created community seed banks with indigenous seeds and help farmers go organic. No GMO seeds, no debt, no suicides. And encouragement for farmer prosperity from the Indian government is coming in other ways as well, paving the way for an organic, non-GMO India completely. Now, the states of Goa, Rajasthan and Sikkim have begun to transition to produce 100% organic agriculture, and the State Department of Agriculture has launched a state sector plan titled Assistance for Use of Organic Inputs by the Farmer, in which farmers can receive significant assistance from the government when it comes to obtaining organic agricultural inputs such as organic fertilizers and also biopesticides. This next story is no surprise. It's what I've been warning of. It's not about helping certain people. It's about creating division. The question of whether biological males who identify as female should be allowed to participate in high school sports for the team corresponding to their gender identity might finally get answered by the federal government. On Monday, the Alliance Defending Freedom filed a federal discrimination complaint with the Department of Education for Civil Rights, seeking to reverse a Connecticut interscholastic athletic conference policy that permits high school athletes to compete as the gender with which they identify, not what they were born with. Now, the ADF claims the policy violates Title IX, a federal regulation that prohibits discrimination on the basis of sex. By allowing biological males to compete against females, the state is depriving young female athletes of equal rights, and the girls deserve to compete on a level playing field. The ADF said forcing female athletes to compete against boys is grossly unfair and destroys their athletic opportunities. Now, the ADF legal counsel, Christina Holcomb, said that this was being dealt with, and hopefully the government will fix it. What's next? Well, the way it's coming soon, transsexual Olympics. It's all a distraction and a divide and conquer policy. They're not interested in transsexuals, they're not interested in blacks, they're not interested in Jewish people, and they're not interested in whites or male or female. They're not interested in any of us. They just want to create situations where we start arguing with each other and end up hating and fighting on each other. That's what this program, LGBTQ and F and Y and Z, we're running out of letters. That's what it's all about, divide and conquer. They're not helping transsexuals, and the transsexuals are not particularly helping themselves either, and they're being used, and people will turn against them, which is exactly what the system wants. Mr. Trump next, and Iran, land of the Aryans. Despite being cocked and loaded to launch an assault on Iran this week, President Donald Trump says that he eventually decided the strike would not have been appropriate or proportionate to the downing of an unmanned US drone, accusing the Islamic Republic of shooting down the US surveillance drone over international waters. My understanding it wasn't. Trump tweeted on Friday that he'd pulled the plug on an attack 10 minutes before the strike was to take place. And he tweeted, 10 minutes before the strike, I stopped it. not proportionate to shooting down an unmanned drone. I'm in no hurry. Our military is rebuilt, new and ready to go, and is by far the best in the world. Sanctions are biting, and more added last night. Now, the UK government chimed in, no surprise, because it's the Blue Dragon, Black Dragon they're being run by. Said it was adamant that Iran's Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps was responsible for the attacks on the tankers in the Gulf of Oman, insisting that neither another state nor a state actor, nice wording, had the capability to launch such an operation. Really? In a statement, the UK Foreign Secretary Jeremy Hunt said the action violated international norms and urged leadership in Tehran to desist from further destabilising activity. These latest attacks build on a pattern of destabilising Iranian behaviour and pose a serious danger to the region, he said. The video of Schumer spazzing out with Pelosi only added to the theatre. You know, we're glad that Trump listened. I think he's more than aware now of who's playing the games. And certain people who were pushing for that war kind of hung themselves in that event. They kind of hung themselves. Farmers in idyllic rural Romania got a rather unwelcome surprise when they were suddenly swarmed by US soldiers, while armed combat support vehicles ran roughshod through their fields, destroying hectares of crops. And the landowners told a local website on agriculture affairs that it had been taken totally by surprise. When they first saw smoke rising up from the fields, they thought there was a fire. Now, the sight of the military vehicles only made matters more confusing, as the farmers were totally unaware the vehicles were part of a scheduled NATO exercises. Now, the Romanian police turned up and they shed some light on the situation, and apparently the Americans mixed up their coordinates, wouldn't like them in a war zone, ending up in a farmer's field on the way to Bordesani, which was some 10 kilometres north, and the designated exercise site for a week-long NATO manoeuvres codenamed Sabre Guardian 2019, more like Sabre Rattling to me. Now, the US Army said its units crossed into the private farmland as a result of adverse weather conditions. While there's no estimate yet of the total damage caused, a statement by the Romanian defence industry indicated that the wayward soldiers had destroyed hectares of crops, and local authorities have already begun a process to pursue compensation. This next story is connected to the last one. More dot connecting. President Vladimir Putin has temporarily banned Georgian airlines from flying to Russia amid rising tensions between the two countries. On Thursday, some 240 people were injured in protests in Georgia, and the protests were ignited by the appearance of a Russian MP in the country's parliament. Mr. Putin signed a decree on Friday suspending flights to Georgia by all Russian airlines, and the suspension will start from the 8th of July. A transport statement said on Saturday the reason for the latest suspension was to ensure a sufficient level of air security and arrears owed by Georgian companies. And the Kremlin said the suspension on Russian airlines flying to Georgia was to ensure Russia's national security and protect Russian nationals from criminal and other unlawful activities. Tensions between the two countries remain high 11 years after they fought a war over the region of South Ossetia. Those demonstrations are being rattled by NATO actors. Mr. Trump again has been accused of raping a woman many years in the past in a department store now, 23 years ago. And according to the media, this is the 16th woman to accuse him of sexual assault. Ms. E. Jean Carroll, an agony aunt, television show host and magazine columnist, made the accusation in an essay in a New York magazine, which was published last Friday. Trump said on Friday that he'd never met this person in his life, and he added, "Shame on those who make up false stories of assault to try to get publicity for themselves or sell a book or carry out a political agenda. False accusations diminish the severity of real assault." I agree with that. All should condemn false accusations and any actual assault in the strongest possible terms, he said. Ms. E. Jean Carroll, not born in New York, but lives in New York and was born to Jewish parents. They sure do like the publicity, don't they? Here's another one. US President Donald Trump's son-in-law, Jared Kushner, has unveiled the first section of the US Middle East peace plan. Focusing on economics, it envisages more than half of a $50 billion fund being spent in the Palestinian territories over 10 years. And the plan will be presented at a conference in Bahrain next week. But the Palestinian Authority said it will boycott the event, having refused to engage with Mr. Trump since the US recognised Jerusalem in 2017. After last week's show, Clowns in Panic, I think I've had enough of the Kushners and their roles. Oregon next. State House shut down for safety concerns last Saturday, but the threats weren't coming from anonymous trolls or foreign fighters. They were coming from the state's Republican senators, who have teamed up with the usual labels, right-wing militias, no, they're just militias, to threaten violence, they say, over a climate change bill. Now, 11 of Oregon's state Republicans fled the state this week to avoid a vote on a bill that would cap greenhouse emissions. The group, believed to be in hiding in Idaho, left the state Senate with too few lawmakers to hold a vote. But the move is seen as more than just a legislative manoeuvre. The missing senators have partnered with the well, it's gone from right-wing militias to right-wing paramilitary groups to threaten violence, really. No, they are just there to uphold the law, which is essentially what the militias are supposed to do. But you see how it happens. They throw all kinds of labels on them. Right and left wing seems to be the latest pile of drivel. And they have appealed that they should be brought back to Oregon. Now, the state Senate has scheduled sessions on Saturday but cancelled them after reports of several militias two-day rally to take the capital this weekend, and Oregon State Police have recommended that the capital be closed due to a possible militia threat. The trouble started this month when state Senate Democrats advanced plans for a bill that would cut carbon emissions, but Oregon State Republicans weren't on board, citing increased expenses for Oregon residents and businesses. And so they all walked out. The latest from NASA, never a straight answer. Mars, it appears, is belching a large amount of gas that could be a sign of microbes living on the planet today. That swamp gas gets everywhere, doesn't it? Oh dear. believe a single word that they ever say. Remember the graph I put out? It's probably about 12 months ago now. Hire someone, wait for the media to attack them, and then fire. This piece that was put out this week may reinforce that. Some of the Trump's administration's top officials had red flags appear during the Trump transition team vetting process, which was outsourced to the Republican National Committee, according to internal documents that were leaked this week. The documents show that many of the controversies Trump's cabinet members were eventually ousted for were already known to the transition team. The vetting documents for the former Environmental Protection Agency Administrator Scott Pruitt, who resigned following numerous controversies regarding his spending, ethics and management style, had a section titled Allegations of Coziness with Big Energy Companies. And the former Health and Human Services Secretary Tom Price resigned after backlash of Price using his private jet for official businesses. Now, vetting documents for the Price flagged criticisms of management ability, and former Secretary of State Rex Tillerson raised a red flag for his deep ties to Russia. Oh my. And the Trump transition team fired former Governor Chris Christie days after Trump's surprise victory, and the control of the transition team was then headed by the Vice President Mike Pence, who outsourced political vetting to the RNC. Nice when a proposed plan comes to fruition, is it not? Bernie Sanders, oh dear me, a KFC chicken man, or politician, same thing really, will propose on Monday eliminating all the 1.6 trillion of student debt. It's again another story that we've covered recently, makes the headline news and politicians spit it out. And a significant escalation of the policy fight in the 2020 Democratic presidential primary, 2 days before the candidates become first debate in Miami. Now, Sanders is proposing the federal government pay to wipe clean the student debt held by 45 million Americans, including all private and graduate school debt, as part of a package that will also make public universities, community colleges and trade schools tuition free. Now, Sanders, this is again something we've covered, is proposing to pay for these plans with a tax on Wall Street. His campaign says that will raise more than $2 trillion over 10 years. Some tax experts give much lower revenue estimates though. This is another one trying to avoid the trust and avoiding eliminating their tax system. This is what it's about. AOC said the same thing, did she not? This is, presenting it to the public. I'll have another story later on that will make that piece rather clear. Mexico has finally got off its backside and deployed nearly 15,000 soldiers and National Guardsmen to its border with the United States. The army chief said on Monday, admitting they are detaining migrants who try to cross after the policy triggered backlash. Under pressure from Donald Trump to slow the surge of Central Americans crossing the border, Mexico promised earlier this month to reinforce its southern border with 6,000 National Guardsmen, but had not previously disclosed the extent of the crackdown on its northern border. And they stated, we have a total deployment between the National Guard and Army units of almost 14,000, almost 15,000 men in the north of the country. Now, Defence Minister Luis Crescenzo Sandoval said at a press conference alongside the President Andres Manuel Lopez Obrador. Good move. Malaysia pushed back a hearing for Goldman Sachs Group Inc.'s 1MDB case to September after lawyers representing the US bank said the process of filing the charges remains incomplete. Now, the court set a date of September the 30th as the next case management date at a hearing on Monday in Kuala Lumpur. The Deputy Public Prosecutor Aaron Paul Shalea said 4 summonses had been issued against Goldman Sachs entities. 2 were served on Goldman Sachs Asia LLC, which has 2 addresses, shell companies, while others were sent to Goldman Sachs International UK and Goldman Sachs Singapore. Shalea added, however, Goldman's lawyers Hisham Po Take sought a delay in the hearing after saying the charges remain incomplete and their clients have some reservations on whether they were properly served. Now, Shalea said, referring to the US firm, our position is they have been served. The US bank is accused of misleading investors when it arranged the $6.5 billion fund of bond sales, IOUs, for 1MDB, while allegedly known that the funds would be misappropriated. Common theme that. Prosecutors are seeking fines in excess of the $2.7 billion allegedly misappropriated from the proceeds and the return of $600 million of fees that were received by Goldman Sachs. Church of Scientology is finally coming under the microscope, and it should. It's like Nexium on steroids. And its leader, David Miscavige, who has been sued for false imprisonment, kidnapping, stalking, human trafficking, and other shocking allegations in a bombshell lawsuit obtained by a alt media site called RadarOnline.com. Now, in court papers obtained from the Superior Court of California, the plaintiff, who is listed as unnamed Jane Doe, filed the lawsuit on June 18th, 2019. She is suing the church and its leader for false imprisonment, kidnapping, stalking, libel, slander, constructive invasion of privacy, intentional infliction of emotional distress, failure to pay the minimum wage, failure to provide days of rest and meal periods, fraudulent inducement of employment, negligent misrepresentation, and also negligence. And she said the Church of Scientology represents a facade to the outside world to disguise what in reality is nothing more than a cult built on mind control and destruction of the independence and self-control of those drawn into its sphere. She also claimed members are subject to physical, verbal, psychological, emotions and or sexual abuse and or assault. And anyone who speaks out against the Church of Scientology is deemed a suppressive person or an enemy, the plaintiff claimed. And members are directed to injure or destroy that person by any means, she claimed also. Finally, the world's turning on the Church of Scientology. There's, like I said, that's Nexium on steroids, that place. Like a spin-off of the Mormon Church. Right, let's get into some Q&A. I've plucked a few out before we have a couple of songs, and then there's a sub-intel and then a main intel this week. Being that American people have been so dumbed down by fluoride poisoning since 1945, why can't the Trust launch a public awareness campaign to eliminate fluoride in drinking water? All the anti-fluoride facts are supported by the EPA. You're kind of misunderstanding what the Trust is about or what it entails. Essentially what you're asking for is, or need to be asking for is the alt media. It's the alt media's role to highlight that, not the Trust. You know, we could do, if the funding is out, there's a lot we can do. But the funding is being blocked because they know we're going to make changes with it, big time. Given that Facebook, Libra, cryptocurrency is such a threat to fluoride, dumbed down, uneducated youth in America, why can't the Trust forgive all the enslaved student loan program? The American people and children haven't had a chance coming out of the chute. Well, as stated several times in several shows, we have addressed and highlighted this to the government, the need and desire to fix this program, and we are waiting. It may be better to contact your local government and ask them why they haven't acted upon it yet. Since the elites go through the Gulen schools, educate their children in charter schools, why can't the Trust set up schools of enlightenment, teaching humanities, creativity and trades to the young, and also include parent education with engagement between races to end racism? Well, again, like I've stated several times, we have tried to set up new schools, hospitals, cancer cure centres and various other projects, but continue to be blocked. We have thousands, tens of thousands of detailed plans for everything you can imagine. And yet, until others act right, this will be blocked to us. That is their program, not ours. Final question of what the Trust should be doing. Why can't the Trust set up the people's banks like what was done by the blacks in Greenwood, Tulsa, Oklahoma? Again, as mentioned several times, we have tried everything possible from our end. It needs the balls of some others to grow. Aka, grow a set. You know, I don't think these sets of questions has been thought through too well, particularly if you've been listening to the shows. You know, no one is more frustrated than we are for things not rolling out. We've done years of work to get things pushed forward, and we wait on others. We cannot do everything. We're not in control of everything. Others have to do their part, but we are not the problem. So, next question. So, whom or how does the other targeting work? Well, all in alt media are potential targets. Why? Because we have dared to question the system, and their narrative is why. You know, Kim and I, as posted, this was mentioned in a longer letter. I've took that piece out. Kim and I are more targeted because not only do we not question the system, we have actively participated of, in part, destroying it, and certainly destroying the narrative by outing the control system. You see, they want every one of us kept in the dark, and this show and Kim's work has brought it all into the light. I suspect the value of our work will not be realised until much later. If we were the first wave, I was born in the late 60s. No, that was not the first wave, that was the second. You said a mistake was made as we got no support help. Yeah, because of certain technology, we ended up being pushed into vessels that were not conducive from a parental aspect. It's a common theme, even listening to An Evening with Thomas. So many who are slightly different ended up with parents who were abusive or not fully supportive. It's a common theme. Was the mistake ours, sources, or the source reality people who sent us? Neither. On all three. It was clown technology. As for where do we come from, source reality or another plane, planet, something else, you stated my soul would feel better knowing where home is. Only you need to know that, and no one can really tell you where you came from. That's your answer to find out. During meditation, I ran across what could only be described as a circular white portal that I could pass through. The other side was full of beasties. When I stepped back through the portal, I could not pass. I don't know what action to take. Try and deal with the beasties or leave it alone. Don't engage. Don't engage. And remember, portals are technology of which they control, mainly. Once you learn to sidestep the astral, you don't need portals or wormholes. A lot of these beasties, as you said, or the jinns in particular, are not real currently, because so many of them got deleted. They're using VI technology to present them to people. But if you stand in your own sovereignty and go, you're not real, go away, suddenly they vanish. Then you know. You know, only engage if you have to, is what I'm saying. On one of your latest shows, you mentioned doing yoga is not a good idea. That's not what I said. Because all of the chakras are opened up. Now, yoga is fine. The warning was not that yoga is not a good idea. The warning is that too few people who do yoga don't know how to shield beforehand. The shielding is imperative. You are opening up channels, and it's another form or another way of people becoming possessed. There's a lot of this in, when you look at it, the New Age yoga is kind of wrapped into that program, and the ayahuasca and the pot and all that stuff. And all three of them are ways of humans being possessed. But yoga itself, in and of itself, is fine. Unfortunately, Alan of Circle of White Light interviewed a yoga expert and mentioned this very piece, which didn't go down too well. It kind of, she went rather defensive on it. But she's an expert on how to use yoga or the discipline of yoga. So rather than taking the new evidence on board or looking at it, she completely dismissed it because she's an expert. You can only be an expert on what you've been taught, and most of us have been taught little. And this is the problem, that probably 99% of people who do yoga have no idea of what they're doing and how they're opening up all the channels. And if you open up the channel, then you might just end up with an entity within it, and they're not easy to get rid of. There's very few people, sadly, who can deal with those type of situations. Is it okay to ask which non-humans are friendly or benevolent to humans? Well, technically all of them, but technically all of them aren't either. It's like every other group. There's good and bad in all of them. Is Tepe connected to the Kalima, and is there a connection to the southern part of Africa where name is related to Jerusalem and African Palestinians? This is like the Bible and their story, when fake gods and angels ruled the world and enslaved humans. That's essentially what that is. Now the second part is like what you mentioned about Africa, is likely Ethiopia. Why? Because that was the scene of the fourth Garden of Eden of the sub-grey race. Is Anu dead or alive or forced off planet? Dead. Who funds the chemtrail spraying? SSP. Do you know what's going on with Merkel shaking like a leaf? I think she's got Anne syndrome. I don't know what's going on with that. Maybe her bot is breaking down, who knows? And really, does anybody care? If there are 39 species under our feet, how many of these are on the Galactic Council? All of them. Final question. What is the deeper background information on the war at the Falkland Islands of Argentina in 1982? A vast hidden treasure trove of mainly gold hidden in vaults underneath the island, dating back many, many years, is what it was all about. And the gold was being, that particular gold, which is now all gone and not in their control, it was going to be leveraged to the Bank of America, that particular gold vault. And the other gold vault that was hidden in Cuba started the Bay of Pigs War, or incident. And that gold was being leveraged by the Bank of Canada. It's all about the money, you see. We'll be back shortly. Hi all, and welcome back to the Intel, which is in two parts. The first part is people should watch the Deutsche Bank, because that bank is in a death spiral. The share price has dropped by over 90% since 2008 and continues to fall. Once one goes, the rest follows. I've said often now, have cash at all times. It's your own personal insurance, because once it goes, if it goes, there's always a chance it won't, alright, because certain things will take precedence. But if the banks collapse, the credit cards and debit cards will no longer work. They don't have sufficient funds to cover it. So if you rely solely on cards, you're going to be in trouble. Now, we did a piece last week about sales, Rothschild selling more again, and the Queen selling a house in Malta, which is not being sold by the Queen, as has been put out in the media, but the Crown is selling it. Again, evidence that they're kind of struggling, are they not? Now, the Crown claimed ownership over all of the assets of the Queen, and contrary to public opinion, the Queen does not own the Buckingham Palace anymore either. The Crown does. And what they do is they give them $2 million or pounds, per year to keep the place running, plus expenses for travel. In essence, the role of royalty has become a public relations exercise. It's nowhere near what it used to be. So what is significant about that house? Well, it was the Knights of Malta, which ties into the Templars. And underneath that house is a bunker, which contains the Library of Alexandria. That's why that house is significant. Next item, I'm going to read out a piece that's been translated from Portuguese into English. And we received another confirmation this week via the media of the existence and proof of funds from the Manor World Holding Trust. Now, predictably, the media and some certain alt media clowns are trying to spin it. And this is what happens. Anyone involved with getting funding is immediately accused of being rogue or a rogue organisation. And this is the modus operandi of the clowns currently, to discredit anyone or anything connected with the trust. So this is what was stated in a news piece in Brazil. A group in a messaging application came to be formed to organise the implementation of the so-called safe room in the city of Florianopolis. And this and other information is in a 156-page police inquiry conducted by the federal police, detailing the alleged crimes committed by the criminal organisation investigated in Operation Shabu, and accused of obtaining and passing on sensitive information from police operations. All very good, and nothing to do with the trust. Now, the police investigation of the PF resulted in the decree of temporary detention for 5 days of 7 people. Among them was the mayor of Florianopolis. That is significant. You'll see why later. Jean Lauriero, and 23 search warrants and seizures in a decision of Federal Judge Leandro Paulson, who is of the Regional Federal Court, 4th Region. Now, the document is based mainly on information collected from the mobile phones of the businessman Jose Augusto Alves and the Federal Police Delegate Fernando Amaro de Moraes Queiron. Now, 2 of the 7 defendants who have been temporarily detained, Alves is still in prison, while Queiron was released on Wednesday night, almost 48 hours after he was arrested in Porto Alegre. Now, the Safe Room group was created in a messaging application to deal with the implementation of the information leakage-proofed space that was supposed to be installed in Florianopolis Prefecture. On April 27, 2018, Luciano Cunha Teixeira, who is the commercial manager of Suntex, announces that he will go to Paraguay to obtain the necessary equipment for the assembly of this particular room. Again, all nothing to do with the Man of World Holding Trust, but you'll get the picture soon. The group continues to discuss what would be the best equipment to set up the safe room of Florianopolis City Hall. Teixeira even lists equipment that will be purchased, among them audio recorders, spy cameras and jammers which emit signals with the same frequency used in the GSM network, causing interference. By audio, Alves explains to the members of the group the necessary characteristics of the equipment and indicates that the intention is to sell it to public agencies. In other words, they were getting advanced technology and we're going to pass it on to the various agencies. Now, the participation of Kieron is highlighted by a technical consultant or consulting in the construction of safe environments to test police investigations, and so that Teixeira can enter the country with the equipment acquired in Paraguay. To that end, Alves also tries to help a federal highway police officer from Foz do Iguacu, but is unsuccessful because he is far from the activity. However, on May the 2nd, Teixeira informs that he was able to bring the equipment from Paraguay, a fact that is celebrated by the delegate through message icons. Now, in testimony given to the federal police, the mayor, John Loureiro, denied participation in the criminal organisation and the existence of the so-called safe room. Also, according to Loureiro, agents of the federal police were in the city hall and did not find the equipment. Oops. Sounds all staged to me, but on it goes. The lawyers for Kieron, Teixeira and Alves were not located by the report. The next part is billion-dollar investment. The federal police investigation also highlights that the business Jose Augusto Alves and the delegate of PF Fernando Kieron had very large business activities. One of them would be the intermediation to implant a project of $10 billion for the technological city in the south of the island of Santa Catarina. For this, Alves and Kieron sought the mayor, Mr. Loureiro, who even sent office to Institute Meta 21 to present formal support for the project. Developed by Institute Meta 21, the project would receive a $10 billion contribution from an international fund known as the Man of World Holding Trust. However, in order for the Meta 21 Institute to receive the resources, Alves and Kieron tried to obtain the central bank's seal on the origin of the resources. To this end, they scheduled a meeting with the oversight of Bank of Brazil in Florianopolis, and on the agenda, a presentation of a letter of donation to the central bank, donation contract of the Meta 21 Institute for construction of the technological city, verification of the central bank of proof and origin of funds, and government assistance in the release of the central bank. So all the documents were there. However, Alves and Kieron were unable to obtain economic advantage from the negotiation because the commercial proposal of exchange operation was not supported by the COAF, Council for Financial Activities, that is. The bank refused to open a current account that would be used for the receipt of the $10 billion. This was after clown intervention, by the way. Now, during his testimony to the PF, the mayor confirmed that he had participated in a meeting to participate in the project, but stated that the work plan needed to raise funds from the International Fund was never prepared due to a lack of credibility after research on the financial fund, and that there was no requirement of counterpart of the City Hall in the project. Now, in the police investigation, Kieran states that he is not a partner, even if informal, occasional or sporadic, Jose Augusto Alves in any commercial activity, and that he would have been invited, as well as Alves, to integrate future projects to be developed in the capital, which aims to develop technologies for humanitarian purposes. So that's the gist of that particular letter. The guy Claudio is a partner to the doctor who is using holistic and conventional medicine. That's what the technological city was for. This particular doctor in Brazil has cured several heads of state of cancer. That is who wants to build the medical centre in Brazil. And all was going well. The Central Bank of Brazil, the Brazil Intelligence Agency, and the new president all verified the funds. And then the Chinese promised the central bank governor $1 billion personally if he would not let any funding into the country from anyone, including the Man of World Holding Trust, which is what he did. And he's still not being paid, and the country is going more broke by the day. Now, the Netherlands guy involved in this knows nothing, because he was not involved in much of the work in Brazil. But this is what the clowns do. They take an innocent transaction and then trump up bogus charges on people connected to or engage with the Man of World Holding Trust, and then present it to the public. These people are rogue on both sides. In essence, this article has nothing to do with the Man of World Holding Trust, but they are using it to write slightly misdirected articles to do anything to discredit the trust and the people who are wishing to do the projects. Trumped up charges. You know, they've tried everything to rake up mud on Kim, I and the team. All of it failed. So now they are reduced to portal people misdirection. Oops. So to sum up this story, the trust was given $10 billion to support the work and build an advanced hospital for people who were vetted and who have proven to cure cancer, and the clowns blocked it. This is what they do. And to those in the alt media who choose to spin it for an agenda against me and Kim, neither of us care if you don't like us personally. We're not bothered. We both know it's your own reflections you don't like. But you all need to take a step back in your thinking process, supporting a group and a cause that stops people being funded for a cancer cure hospital. Is that your level of thinking? Is that you and what you stand for? All love and light, but supporting the clowns in the blocking of a cure for cancer. Oh my. The darkness not only prevails, but is spreading within you. And with that much darkness, the irony is some of you in that group may one day need that hospital. Once again, we'd like to thank Bubba and his team for highlighting our cause and our goal of expanding the truth to the reality of the Man of World Holding Trust is expanding, thanks to people like Bubba. Now, a few weeks ago, Australians were sent letters, this was sent by one of the members, advising that bank transactions can now be made with all banks at post offices. Remember David Wynn Miller talking about the US monetary system was run by the post office. Why won't they run it by the banks? Why are they going back to post offices? Remember, Australia is like a colony, like America is a colony of the Crown and Britain. So what's happening now, they deposit a cheque via the bank directly and it clears immediately, whereas if we deposit cheques via the post office, it now takes 9 days. There is their clearance account again, that's been deleted in the banks, is why. This is what they do, anything to get round the old system. And as forecasted in this show last year, Zimbabwe was going with their own currencies and not participating in the Zims nonsense of the RV. I would take a veiled guess of expecting an announcement of the RV being scrapped altogether if Libra gets any leverage. They can't run both policies at the same time because it's contradictory. It's a bit like the white paper. Anyway, the finance minister of Zimbabwe, Mthuli Ncube, said on Monday that foreign currency is no longer acceptable for local transactions and the Zimbabwean dollar is now the only accepted form of currency. Now, previously, Zimbabwe had used a multiple currency basket, and the sole legal tender in all transactions is the Zimbabwean dollar as of June the 24th. Now, according to a statement made in a statutory instrument on Monday, said that the US dollar, South African rand, the British pound, the Botswana pula and any other foreign currency will no longer be legal tender alongside the Zimbabwean dollar in any transaction in Zimbabwe. This is kind of highlighting the warning behind the metadata and the cryptos. It's why I've put this in the intel and further warn of the dot connecting of how these companies are all coalescing into a much tighter unit. Earlier this month, Google used its algorithmic power and removed many of the top natural health and health freedom websites from the search results. Some of those sites losing as much as 99% of their traffic. And then I look into it, as I do, and then I find the British pharmaceutical giant GlaxoSmithKline and Google's parent company, Alphabet Inc., yes, the same one, have announced they are creating a new company to develop bioelectronic medicines. Connecting dots. The joint venture will be named Galvani Bioelectronics and will be headquartered in the UK, with 55% of equity interest owned by Glaxo and 45% owned by Alphabet's Verily Life Sciences division, formerly known as Google Life Sciences. Galvani will be initially funded with $540 million over the next 7 years, which is $712 million, and plans to have treatments ready for a regulatory approval by 2023, which is 1 year before the end of Libra. Remember the 5 years? Bioelectronics is a relatively new branch of healthcare, which, as the name suggests, focuses on bringing together electronics and biological research. And the term can cover a number of different therapies, but GlaxoSmithKline plans to concentrate on creating electrical implants that can be used to treat diseases. This overall concept is similar to a pacemaker, which uses electrical pulses to prompt the beating of a heart, and scientists believe similar devices could be used to treat a wide range of chronic conditions, including arthritis, diabetes and asthma, by stimulating specific parts of the body. Researchers say workable implants should be no larger than a grain of rice. Oh dear. That is your microchip download program I warned about in the show on Saturday. Your wallet, which is on your phone, eventually will be replaced by this chip. And like I said, they can load that chip with all kinds. You think for 1 second that they're doing cures. Think again. GlaxoSmithKline and Google. Think they're really interested in us and curing? But I don't. This is the danger of Libra and what it leads to. As reported in last week, the Manor World Holding Trust dropped a load of funds in Citibank, and they decided to restrict access to their account. So blocks got placed on them, and you may also see that bank go down, as well as Deutsche. Currently they are negative 600% in equity. Following further work done by Kim and the team, we found out that banks were giving out credit lines to each other to keep the clowns going. This is why every bank's in massive negative equity. They're giving each other credit lines to keep going until they can get their Libra up and running, or something else, or take over the trust, which they still think they can do. Good luck with that. So all banks have now been stopped from issuing any credit lines whilst in negative equity. That was installed on all banks globally. So there'll be no more credit lines allowed to be issued by any individual bank until they bring their liquidity back up to zero, which, if they continue with their current mode of operation, is impossible. The bank situations will get ugly. Financial issues escalating, credit cards failing, ATMs also. Please watch out for double charging. That scandal is still going on. And please check your statements more regular than you do. They're stealing off everything and everyone. Keep cash. It is your lifeline. As if all else crashes, your cards, credit or debit, will be useless. And your banks being inaccessible is also a possibility at this point as well. Due to substantial threats and actions currently ongoing that has escalated things drastically behind the scenes, it has been decided that things will go dark for a while until things settle down. I don't think this is a long-term thing, and certainly not the end of anything. But the safety of Kim and the team must be the primary concern at this point. To that end, Kim has decided to go dark for an undetermined amount of time, which means she will not be contacting anyone or making herself available for any calls, regardless of who that is, whether connections close or otherwise. And I ask those close to honour that decision. There will be no what, when, where or why questions answered within this period, and we will not be talking any more or any further to any banks, governments, agencies or other financial services who promised us everything and delivered nothing in the way of services or support. Much progress has been made on many fronts. This is must be reinforced, and that work and progress must be locked down at this point. Why? Because the backlash to that work that's been done is getting real ugly at this point. Now, there may also be a case where the intel also goes dark for a bit at this point as well. And we're asking for all to respect our decisions. We know what we're doing, but we have to protect ourselves and our work at this point in time. Hi all and welcome back. I imagine the last piece can disturb some, but you know, we have to lock down the achievements we have already made, which is fairly substantial in many ways. And there are times when people forget of what it's like to live in other people's shoes. It's easy to sit on a computer and go, well, why haven't they done this and why haven't they done that? You know, those that have followed the shows all the way through know we've done considerable amounts of work, particularly Kim, under extreme duress, with assassins and all kinds of other fun and games designed to take us out. And sometimes, you know, you have to look after yourself as well, which is something both of us kind of need to remind each other at times. The work goes on, but we'll not be engaging with banks or governments. They need to get their act together before the whole thing collapses, including them, because we won't be bailing them out. Right, let's get into the op-ed pieces. And first off, I'm gonna read out a report from Kevin Annett. And investigators on Canada's west coast have uncovered the suspected mass graves of Indigenous women and children at 3 separate locations now. And this announcement came the other day after months of independent investigations conducted by the ITDC that have relied on police, media and Aboriginal sources. Now, according to the report of the ITDC investigators, the grave sites are found on the coast and also the interior, and according to sources and initial surveys, these sites contain the remains of many hundreds, perhaps thousands of Aboriginal people, including many women and children. Now, one of these sites contains very recent burials laid atop of an older mass grave of Indian residential school children, and these sites have been known to local Aboriginals, but the latter may have been threatened and silenced by the Royal Canadian Mounted Police and also tribunal council officials. Local residents claim that the RCMP officers and private hit squads are responsible for the killings and the burials, and one witness observed an RCMP tactical unit burying bodies as recently as March this year. Now, in response to this discovery, 10 a.m. Eastern Standard Time the other day, a formal request was issued to the United Nations Security Council and to the United Nations Peacekeepers Office by the ITDC that the request asked for UN peacekeepers and forensic specialists to be immediately dispatched to British Columbia to assist this investigation, and also to be present at an international genocidal tribunal which it has been convened under ITDC auspices in Vancouver on September the 16th this year. Prime Minister Justin Trudeau and 20 other high officials of church, state and business have been publicly summoned to appear before this tribunal to answer charges of complicity in genocide. The September 16th tribunal was prompted by Prime Minister Trudeau's public admission on June the 3rd that genocide has occurred within Canada, and by the corollary obligation imposed on UN member states by the Genocide Convention to prosecute and punish that crime. Our request for the UN peacekeepers and forensic specialists is not made lightly, especially in the light of the discovery of these mass graves, and they need to be disinterred and examined and charges brought against those responsible, like at any other suspected crime scene. This was stated by Kevin Annett. This is a dangerous effort, he went on. 7 of our Aboriginal eyewitnesses and activists have died of foul play in the course of our investigations of the disappearance of Aboriginal families on Canada's west coast. As Human Rights Watch has shown, the RCMP are directly implicated in these assaults and also disappearances. Our naming of top Canadian officials is possible conspirators in an ongoing genocide makes this danger all the more real. Further evidence of the recently discovered mass graves will be revealed at a special press conference and gathering on Parliament Hill in Ottawa, Canada on Monday, July the 8th at 10 a.m. The ITDC has asked that the UN peacekeepers be present at this event also to protect its public spokespeople, including the ITDC Field Secretary Kevin Annett. Annett has recently faced illegal arrest and detention and other harassment at the hands of the RCMP and also Canadian Border Services agencies, and the ITDC considers these attacks as further attempts by Canada to obstruct justice and derail an international human rights inquiry into its crimes. It's brave stuff, you know, what Kevin's doing. I've met the man a few times. He's a fairly genuine man, and it takes some balls, of which we need some of them in so-called high official roles in America, to act and right the wrongs. You know, this genocide has gone on for thousands of years. This is what From Russia with Love series is all about. They've just been wiping us out left, right and centre for thousands of years, and it has to stop. Now, what happens when you put yourself on the line, like myself and Kim and Kevin? You get all kinds of harassment, and your life is literally tipped upside down. And this is often overlooked, I feel. And some people are making stupid comments on alt media as to what that life's really like. Is it any sort of life? Cops and all kinds of authorities breathing down your neck, all for telling the truth. Next op-ed. I'm going to read this report out and then I'm going to pass comment on it. According to a study was published back in 2015, it's just come to light. The study found that children raised without religion tend to be kinder than children brought up in very religious households. Oops. And this study was a collaborative effort between numerous academics from 7 different universities that are spread out all over the world. And the team studied children from a variety of different backgrounds, including Christian, Muslim, and non-religious, and found that, among other things, children from religious households were more judgmental. And the study itself was titled "The Negative Association Between Religiousness and Children's Altruism Across the World." And their findings contradict the common sense and popular assumption that children from religious households are more altruistic and kind towards others. More generally, they call into question whether religion is vital for moral development, supporting the idea of secularization of moral discourse will not reduce human kindness. In fact, as the survey found, it will do just the opposite. Now, the researchers involved nearly 1,200 children between the ages of 5 and 12, and the children were from a variety of different cultures, including children from the US, Canada, China, Jordan, Turkey, and also South Africa. Of those who participated in the experiment, nearly 24% were Christian, 43% Muslim, and 27.6% non-religious. Children who were Jewish, Buddhist, Hindu, agnostic, or other less ubiquitous religions were not statistically significant enough to have their results included in the study. Now, in the study, children put in situations where they would have an opportunity to share with others, and they were also shown video footage of children fighting and pushing each other while researchers gauged their reactions, and the results of the study robustly demonstrate that children from households identifying as either of the 2 major world religions, Christianity and Islam, were less altruistic than children from non-religious households. Now, the researchers also noted that older children who have been more indoctrinated into a particular religion exhibited the greatest negative relations. And the study also found that religious children are more likely to be judgmental and punitive towards other children, and religiousness was inversely predictive of children's altruism and positively correlated with their punitive tendencies. Now, together these results reveal the similarity across countries in how religion negatively influences children's altruism, challenging the view that religiosity facilitates pro-social behaviour. Now, the study went on to say, while it is generally accepted that religion contours people's moral judgments and pro-social behaviour, the relation between religion and morality is a contentious one. One aspect that was not covered in the study is that religious parents are often punitive, which means inflicting or intended as punishment with their children, and things like spanking were considered socially acceptable. There is a very good chance that this is the actual reason why children of religious parents have a harder time getting along with others. And the numerous studies have now shown the harmful effects of spanking and similar parenting strategies. Now, the United Nations Committee on the Rights of the Child issued a directive in 2006 calling physical punishment legalised violence against children, and that it should be eliminated in all settings through legislative, administrative, social and educational measures, and a treaty that established the committee has been supported by 192 countries in all. Only the United States and Somalia are failing to ratify it. Now, spanking has been banned in 53 countries and states globally, but it's also important to point out that there are mountains of scientific evidence proving that spanking is bad for the mental health and development of children, with absolutely no studies showing that it does any good. So that ends the myth that religion makes a child more whole, moral, or aware of their own responsibilities, does it not? And yet, why do we impose it on them? This is the problem. You know, people identify themselves as being Catholic or Protestant or Muslim or whatever. But has anybody not considered that wasn't a child's choice, was it? No child comes out born religious. I imagine that's got some people's heads pondering. Some more financial figures for you about the issues of poverty, and extreme poverty at that, which leads into another piece about AOC and taxes, and also social security. But back in 2015, when they kind of stopped counting, it appears, there was an estimated 935 million people, which is 12.7% of the world's population at that time, living below the extreme poverty line of $1.90 per day. $1.90. Now, according to Poverty Facts, currently roughly 50% of the world's people live on less than $2.50 a day, while 80%, 5.15 billion, live on $10 a day or less. The richest 1%, which is 73 million of the world's population, owns 50% of the world's total wealth, estimated at 125 trillion. And of the richest 1%ers, there are 34 million people, 0.7 of 1% of the global adult population, who has a net worth of at least $1 million. These people hold 45% of the global wealth. And within the top 1%, there is much more elite club. These people will become more prominent because those millionaires are going to get swamped. You'll find out why shortly. This multi-millionaire and billionaire club represents 0.36 of 1% of the world's adult population, or roughly 124,000 adults with a net worth of more than $50 million. And at the base of the global wealth pyramid are those with a net worth of less than $10,000, who account for a massive 71% of the world's population. Now, the total cost per year to end extreme poverty within 20 years would be about $175 billion a year, according to the latest estimates anyway. I think it's less than that personally. But when you consider that is 1/6 of our current military spending in America. Put that into perspective. A 1/6 cut in American military spending will erase poverty for the rest of the world. Or let's look at the combined wealth of the world's billionaires, 6.48 trillion. This can be easily achieved by taking off the harvesters and removing some of their ill-gotten gains. Could it not? So as touched on earlier, some of America's billionaires have been sending messages to Mr. Trump to tax them. Does that make any sense? Have these people suddenly gained a conscience? Not likely. But 19 billionaires, including the dead George Soros, Abigail Disney, Chris Hughes and members of the Pritzker family, released a bipartisan letter on Monday asking the 2020 presidential candidates to support a tax on the American families with the largest fortunes. The next dollar of the new tax revenue should come from the most financially fortunate, not from middle income and lower income Americans. So this is what they do. They just appeal to the lower end to vote for something. You'll see why. And the letter, first reported by the New York Times, said a tax on America's wealthiest has been at the forefront of the 2020 elections, and presidential hopefuls, good luck with that, Senator Elizabeth Warren and Bernie Sanders, the Mayor Pete Buttigieg and Representative Beto O'Rourke and more have come out in support of a tax on the wealthiest Americans. Who started all this off? AOC. So why are they saying it? Because of the proposals that we worked on and put forward to end their game of only the poorer being taxed is why. Don't think for 1 second these people have suddenly gained a conscience. They have none. And it's another of their clever plots designed to dupe the public into keeping the IRS in its present format, with the seducement of let's tax the rich. We've heard that for the last 100 and so years. It's never happened and never will either. This is what they're doing to keep the old system. And the public, completely ignorant, will vote for a continuation of the IRS based on that proposal. Well, they're taxing the rich, great. No, you're not getting it. Whereby they vote to continue a false system that's been imposed on the people. Now, the new solutions that we put forward, that is now in the House and Senate, will make real change, not fake illusionary solutions these clowns are promoting. How about an alternate solution? All billionaires give half of their wealth to the People's Club Foundation, which is around 3.25 trillion. Then the people can decide how to share it out, not the system. But can you imagine asking that? Or that playing out, with billionaires wailing everywhere? That would only leave me with 1.5 billion left. How am I possibly going to get by with that amount? This is the way these people think. My reply would be, how do you expect 12% of the planet to survive on less than $2 a day? Or 50% who live on less than $2.50 a day? These people are greedy, vacuous cretins. With that money, we can also end student loan debt, global poverty, and start some projects designed to help the people, not harvest off them. But you watch, they're going to push that tax, and what it is to keep the IRS in business. And the stupid people, ignorant of it, will vote for it. A highlight report of Social Security. Millions of seniors today get a large proportion of their monthly income from Social Security, but many of today's workers don't expect to get the same when they retire. In fact, in a survey, 22% of non-retired Americans think it is unlikely that Social Security will be available to pay them benefits when they retire. This according to Northwestern Mutual's Planning and Progress study. And the latest Social Security Trustees report paints a fairly bleak picture of the programme's financial outlook. In the coming years, they say the programme will owe more money in scheduled benefits than it expects to collect in revenue. Thus, it will need to tap into its trust funds to compensate for that shortfall. Once those funds run out of money, however, Social Security may have no choice but to cut benefits drastically if lawmakers don't manage to intervene with a fix. As of earlier this year, the trustees expect those trust funds to be depleted by 2035, and they anticipate a 20% reduction in scheduled benefits once that happens. These targets, though, they state, are subject to change. It's only bleak if clowns continue. In fact, it will get even more bleaker, as last week's show warned. This Social Security is a slush fund. The trust has been paying the Social Security for decades. And yet again, what they'll do is they'll put fear in the public and then go, we're going to have to put the Social Security up a couple of percent. It's already there. Clowns. We're going to have a music break and we'll be back shortly. Hi all and welcome back. Long time since I've heard that one. On Monday, Project Veritas, very strange alt media type company, seems to have an awful lot of funding, released a video revealing Google's liberal machine learning fairness program, which a Google executive admitted defines fairness in terms of any supporter of Donald Trump would disagree with. And she also suggested that Elizabeth Warren plan to break up Google is misguided because only Google has the power to prevent the next Trump situation. In other words, they're planning on cheating the election again. And she also expressed the goal with Google's algorithms to prevent 2016 from ever happening again. It's like a small company cannot do that, according to Gen AI. Funny how names suddenly fit. Head of Responsible Innovation at Google Global Affairs. I don't call that fiddling an election responsible. And this is, again, it's another sign of their desperation on all levels now, that they're coming up with all kinds and wasting vast amounts of resources to do anything to keep the old system afloat. And it's up to us to keep pushing, and we will from our end, and it's up to all the members and listeners to this show and the various other alt media shows to do the same. Keep pushing back. Now, as for Project Veritas, it's an interesting name in and of itself, and it's also Langley again. Veritas, Able Danger, Camelot and Avalon are all former CIA project names. Why would so many of the alt media have CIA project names for the name of their show. But it also links into the show we did last Saturday, and those tentacles are getting wider and also deeper. Because of course you have Veritas Technologies LLC. Again, Langley crops up, which is an American international data management company headquarters in Mountain View, California, Silicon Valley. This is another addition to Saturday's outing of these companies that are all interconnected. Now, the company has its origins in Tolerant Systems, which was founded in 1983 and was later renamed Veritas Software, which specializes in storage management software, including the first commercial journaling file system, VXFS, VXVM and VCS, and the personal small office backup software called Backup X, and the enterprise backup software Net Backup. Now, Veritas's Record Now was an early CD recording software also. And then here's the kicker. Prior to merging with Symantec, mentioned in the last show, in 2004, Veritas was listed on the S&P 500 and the Nasdaq 100 under the VRTS ticker symbol. Now, following its merger, the Veritas brand was replaced by Symantec, and in 2014, Symantec announced it would demerge its information management business as Veritas Technologies LLC in order to focus on security, in other words, spying. And it was purchased as part of the demerger by the private equity firm for $8 billion in cash, the Carlyle Group, which is Bush, Bin Laden, and the CIA again. Oops. Told you, it gets wider and deeper. UN expert, I wouldn't call them experts, again warned of a possible climate apartheid. This report was kind of interesting in many ways, and it's kind of supports some of the stuff we've put in our show, where they are warning where the rich can pay to escape from hunger while the rest of the world is left to suffer under climate apartheid. And even if current targets are met, millions will be impoverished, according to Philip Alston, the UN Special Rapporteur on Extreme Poverty. And he also criticised steps taken by UN bodies as patently inadequate. Ticking boxes will not save humanity or the planet from the impending disaster, Mr. Alston warned. And the Australian native is part of the UN's panel of independent experts, had submitted his report, which is based on existing research, to the UN Human Rights Council last Monday. Now, Mr. Alston said the UN is not interested in humanity one iota. Well, this is my piece now. But Mr. Alston needs to understand that the UN in and of itself is not interested in humanity one iota, and is another of the overarching governing bodies created during or just after World War II to implement their tighter controls of the people. Now, what needs to happen with the UN? It needs to be disbanded publicly. It already has officially, and install people from the general populace who are interested in humanity, not self-appointed clowns operating for and by the few. They also need to allow a safe passage of either Kim and I, or just Kim, to attend the UN meeting and address the world's leaders to the truth of what has gone on here and how we can change direction completely to restore this planet and all beings on it and in it, whilst working together. What people may or may not know is the Man of World Holding Trust has 6 seats on the UN Council. Currently we're blocked. On the other hand, Mr. Olsen cites examples of how the wealthy in Western nations already cope with extreme weather events. This is an interesting piece. When Hurricane Sandy hit New York in 2012, most citizens were left without power, yet the Goldman Sachs headquarters was protected by tens of thousands of its own sandbags and power from its generator. Similarly, the private white glove firefighters have been dispatched to save the mansions of the wealthy. They look after their own, you see. And it's another example of this filth in our midst who just look after themselves while everyone else sinks. And the blame for this lies with the police, the agencies and the military for allowing these psychopaths to control and use us in this manner. None of you in those groups will be saved if the shit totally hits the fan. None. Like us, you'll all be left out on a limb, whilst they hide out like Lenin did during the Bolshevik Revolution, of which he was the supposed leader. We'll have more than that in From Russia with Love 5 or 6. Now, in this same report, one female member of this team, this UN team, stated, quote, "Women are too scared to have children due to climate change," unquote. Well, I, for one, is personally glad those women with that type of thinking are not having children. They're too stupid to see through their own illusions without passing on that level of stupidity and burdens onto their children. Small mercies, as they say. Women are too scared to have children due to climate change. It could be the fact that they've got no money. Or the fact that lots of men suddenly are not as virulent as we used to be. Wonder why. I'm going to highlight Switzerland in this next piece before we have a music break for the final portion of tonight's show. Because Switzerland kind of gets left out of many things. It's a bit like Holland. I may do a piece on Holland as well, on their role in world history. Because it's all hidden behind the mask and the finger-pointing blame towards other countries. But Switzerland is a landlocked country bordered by Italy to the south, France to the west, Germany to the north, and Austria and Liechtenstein to the east, and is geographically divided between the Alps, the Swiss Plateau and the Jura, and is dominated by the Alps, which is home of the Dorsey beings. Little green gremlins, nasty. The largest cities are located among them the two most global cities and economic centres of Zurich and Geneva, and its national flag is symbolism in and of itself. Red background and a white cross, which is a reverse of the previous white background and a red cross. You'll find out why later. The establishment of the old Swiss Confederacy dates back to the late medieval period, resulting from a series of military successes against Austria and Burgundy, and Swiss independence from the Holy Roman Empire was formally recognised in the Peace of Westphalia in 1648. Now, since the Reformation of the 16th century, Switzerland has maintained a strong policy of armed neutrality and has not fought an international war since 1815 and did not join the United Nations until 2002. Well, Switzerland is the birthplace of the Red Cross, one of the world's oldest and best known alleged humanitarian organisations. Yeah, right. But it's also home to numerous international organisations, including the second largest UN office. It is a founding member of the European Free Trade Association, but notably not part of the European Union, the European Economic Area, or the Eurozone. However, it participates in the Schengen area and the European single market through bilateral treaties, which they are no longer allowed to do. Switzerland is one of the most developed countries in the world, with the highest nominal wealth per adult and the 8th highest per capita gross domestic product. The entire region became part of the expanding Frankish Empire in the 6th century, following Clovis I's victory over Alemanni at Tolbiac in 504 AD, and the later Frankish domination of the Burgundians. Now, throughout the rest of the 6th, 7th and 8th centuries, the Swiss regions continued under the Frankish hegemony via the Merovingian and Carolingian dynasties, neither of which were good. Neither of them. By the 1200s, the Swiss plateau comprised the dominions of the houses of Savoy, Zähringen, the Habsburgs and Kaiberg, and some regions, Uri, Schwyz, Unterwalden, later known as Waldstatten, were accorded the imperial immediacy, declared free, to grant the empire direct control over the mountain passes. In other words, the Swiss were completely cut off from everybody else. With the extinction of its male line in 1263, the Kaiberg dynasty fell in 1264 AD, and then the Habsburgs, no surprise there, linked with the Rothschilds and also relatives of Anna von Reitz, under King Rudolf, the First Holy Roman Empire back in 1273. The Habsburgs then laid claim to the Kaiberg lands and annexed them, extending their territory to the eastern Swiss plateau. You see how it all goes on. They just harvest and harvest and harvest. But when war broke out between France and its rivals Russia and Austria, forces invaded Switzerland. The Swiss refused to fight alongside the French in the name of the Helvetic Republic, and in 1803 Napoleon organised a meeting of leading Swiss politicians from both sides in Paris, and the result was the Act of Mediation, which largely, yet again, restored Swiss autonomy and introduced a confederation of 19 cantons. Cantons apparently means regions of autonomy. I thought it was talking about the Rothschilds, as they are total cantons, if you ask me. And in 1815, the Congress of Vienna, for those who don't know, the Congress of Vienna established the United States. 1815. The United States has nothing to do with America. It was the United States of Europe. In 1815, apart from establishing the term United States, it fully re-established Swiss independence, and the European powers agreed to permanently recognise Swiss neutrality. And a system of single weights and measures was introduced, and in 1850 the Swiss franc became the Swiss single currency. Why is it called franc? Because it's relating back to the French and the Frankish dynasty. That's where that term comes from. Switzerland was not invaded during either of the world wars. During World War I, Switzerland was home to Vladimir Lenin, and he remained there until 1917. Guess who assisted him to return him back to Russia? The Germans. Oops. Does that make any sense? Or was the two programs running, as I've suggested in From Russia with Love series? But this neutral, what this really means, neutral means protecting Israelite-created communist programs members who genocided the whole country. And Swiss neutrality was seriously questioned back in 1917 in the Grim Hoffman affair, but it was short-lived. And in 1920, Switzerland joined the League of Nations, which was a precursor of the United Nations, which was also based in Switzerland, in Geneva, and on condition that it was exempt from any military requirements. Common theme. Now, during World War II, Switzerland was able to remain independent through a combination of military deterrence, concessions to Germany, and over the course of the war, Switzerland interned over 300,000 refugees, and the International Red Cross, based in Geneva, played an important part during that conflict. Yes, indeed. But he took everything off the people and put them in camps. Strict immigration and asylum policies, as well as the financial relationships with Nazi Germany, raised much controversy against the Swiss, but not until the end of the 20th century. Allied forces who had bombed part of Switzerland explained the bombings, which violated the 96th Articles of War and resulted from, they stated, navigational errors, equipment failure, weather conditions, and errors made by bomber pilots. Sounds like the NATO US troops in Romania, does it not? Just trot out the same excuses over and again. American people are not going to like this next paragraph. The Swiss expressed fear and concerns that the bombings were intended to put pressure on Switzerland to end its economic cooperation with and neutrality with the Nazis in Germany. In other words, they were working with them. So much for being neutral. Then there was court-martial proceedings that took place in England to do with these bombings. And the US government paid $63 million in Swiss francs for reparations of the bombings. Why is it always Americans that have to pay for this shit? $63 million in the 1940s, and we wonder why we never have any money or we're always in debt. After the war, the Swiss government exported credits through the charitable fund known as Switcher Spend, and also donated to the Marshall Plan. Oh my. The Marshall Plan is that document of the control system. Which was alleged to help Europe's recovery and efforts that ultimately benefited the Swiss economy. Now, Switzerland was the last Western republic to grant women the right to vote, and in 2002 Switzerland became a full member of the United Nations, leaving the Vatican City as the last widely recognised state without full UN membership. Now, large numbers of international institutions have their seats in Switzerland, in part because of its policy of neutrality. Yeah, right. And Geneva is the birthplace of the Red Cross and the Red Crescent movement and the Geneva Conventions, and since 2006 hosts the United Nations Human Rights Council. And even though Switzerland is one of the most recent countries to have joined the United Nations, the Palace of Nations is also in Geneva, the second biggest centre for the UN after New York, and Switzerland was a founding member and home of the previous one, the League of Nations. So apart from the United Nations headquarters, the Swiss Confederation is host to many of the UN agencies, like the World Horror Organization, or World Health, which is a load of bollocks, World Horror Organization, the International Labour Organization, the International Telecommunications Union, the United Nations High Commissioner for Refugees, and about 200 other international organisations, including the World Trade Organization and the World Intellectual Property Organization, all held in Switzerland. Now, the annual meetings of the World Economic Forum is also in Switzerland, in Davos, bring together top international snake oil salesmen and political leaders from Switzerland and foreign countries to discuss important issues facing the world, including health and the environment. And they don't discuss much because none of it's been improved. Additionally, the headquarters of the Bank of International Settlements are also located in Switzerland, in Basel, since 1930. And furthermore, many of the sport federations and organisations are also located throughout the country, such as the International Basketball Federation in Geneva, the Union of European Football Association, UEFA, and the International Federation of Association Football, FIFA, and the International Ice Hockey Federation in Zurich, the International Cycling Union, and the International Olympic Committee in Lausanne. And Switzerland is home to several large multinational corporations, and the largest Swiss companies by revenue are Glencore, Gunvor, Nestlé, Novartis, Hoffmann La Roche, AB&B, Mercura Energy Group, and Adecco. Also notable are UBS AG, Zurich Financial Services, Credit Suisse, Barry Callebaut, Swiss Re, Tetra Pak, the Swatch Group, and the Swiss International Airlines. Now, Switzerland is ranked as having one of the most powerful economies in the world. Not surprised. And since 2000, the Armed Force Department has also maintained the Onyx intelligence gathering system to monitor satellite communications. So they're also the major spy centre. So much for neutrality. Now, the main sources of income for the federal government is sales tax, or VAT for Europe, 33%, and a direct federal tax of 29%. Also in Switzerland, in Geneva, and a nearby French department of Ain, co-host the world's largest laboratory, CERN, dedicated to particle physics research, or so they say anyway. Either way, that failed also. And another important research centre is the Paul Scherrer Institute. Notable inventions out of there include lysergic acid dithalidomide, which is LSD. The red pill chunks of the alt media talk of, not realising LSD is an MK Ultra mind control drug. Oops. Other was diazepam, came from Switzerland also. And I wouldn't describe them as notable, more like genocidal to me. Switzerland has no official state religion, although most of the cantons except Geneva and Neuchâtel recognise official churches, which are either the Roman Catholic Church or the Swiss Reformed Church. These churches, and in some cantons also the Old Catholic Church and Jewish congregations, are financed by official taxation of adherents. Yeah. So that's the history of Switzerland. A history of neutrality, which is actually a cover for we do what we like in here. I'm going to impose rules, statutes and regulations on everyone else. Just like the City of London, Vatican City and the District of Columbia. Neutral in world wars was, for a start, fake. They were helping and funding the Nazis in both of them, as well as protecting the protectorate of the Rothschilds who were stationed in that country. Heavily linked with the Roman Church, despite publicly not declaring, in fact. But who are the armed forces protecting the Vatican? The Swiss Guards. That's not being neutral, is it? And quietly they have collected and housed most of the world governing or controlling bodies, be it the UN, World Health, Bank of International Settlements, Credit Suisse, who are major financial players in financial skullduggery. And given sport is one of the main money makers now, it's no surprise FIFA, UEFA and the Olympic headquarters are situated there either. But it wasn't the only thing they collected. It was they who stored and then claimed large portions of the Nazi loot, artefacts, gold, priceless art pieces, and likely the famous Amber Room also. Remember, during the war, the Rothschilds who run and control Switzerland, which means land of ISIS, funds all sides in the war and so collects the bounty. Then we have CERN, the major clown escape machine, now said to be the home of Libra. Yes, Libra is going to be housed in Switzerland. Which, apart from collapsing the old system of banking, like their flag representing the Red Cross, also housed in Switzerland, and a representation of the old Templars who created usury banking, let us not forget. And you see why Switzerland largely remains hidden from records, researchers and historians. This is a country who have banged on about neutrality for close to 1400 years. What makes that region so special for a certain group of people to continue that line to the modern day? Who or what are they hiding? Why is that country overlooked in so many aspects, yet house so many governing and controlling bodies? Well, the curtain just got pulled back a bit on this piece of real estate that operates under a cloud of illusion. The history is formulated by the cult of Ra and the Egyptian symbolism, which is completed with the role of the Templars, carried on by the sister organisation of them, the Red Cross. We'll be back shortly. This is Dio and Egypt. The chains are on. Hi all and welcome back to the final part of this show. That was a new song I played there. The legendary Ronnie James Dio. He wrote, or co-wrote with Richie Blackmore of Rainbow and Deep Purple, some really esoteric stuff, which is perpetrated through a lot of the heavy rock music, which is why it got denigrated. You know, devil worship and all this stuff. You know, a line from that song, when the world was milk and honey and the magic was strong and true, then the strange ones came and the people knew, yet the chains were on. This is kind of what this show is all about, and From Russia with Love and many of the other Humanity Unplugged, and we've covered it all in the must listen to shows. And in this present time period, we're fighting the end battle of the light and dark. And we are winning. We are winning. This is sent to me, which leads into the final piece, which is a review of last Saturday's show. One of the members bought half a Bitcoin for $100 a while ago, and it was the only way to pay. He made 2 transfers, no problem, but the multi-layer identification required a cell phone. The cell phone became damaged, so they got a new phone and a new number, and could not update the cell number. So they then contacted customer service and was told no way to access that account again without that person sitting in front of a webcam while they uploaded photocopies of their driver's license. Again, this proves what we've been saying. This is data collection on a massive scale. Now, the person refused and told them there had to be another way, and they were told, no, there's not. And they're locked out of the account still. Can you imagine the system going ahead? You know how their systems break down, either deliberately or because of some fun and games with the quantum system or some other reason. Can you imagine thousands or millions of people getting locked out of their account, like many have been locked out of Facebook or Twitter or other programs? Google have gone down, Yahoo's gone down. Can you imagine what the panic that would create? At that point, there's no backup system. The backup system now is to have cash or gold or silver. And then these thousands or millions of people trying to reach customer service. Oh my, good luck with that. You know, which customer service, which as we know today exists of a retarded automated message box. Chaos. Well, I'm going to end tonight's show with a summary of the Clowns in Panic show. And the warning I kept giving about bitcoins and cryptos is there now for all to see. You have no excuses for going along with that program anymore. None. But those with more discernment should have heeded the warning that was given last November when the IMF instructed 134 countries into going with crypto and replacing all the currencies. These were the currencies, remember, that they said they were going to revaluate in their so-called RV program. Why is it still running if they're going crypto? And so much for those in the alt media who cried, but the cryptos are going to get around the cabal system. Oh, they're going to get around the system, okay. But it's a system that is now our system, not theirs. That's the kicker. The reality is cryptos is another dinars, zims and dongs stunt, which the same people fell for. Hand over valid currency, albeit fiat, and we will give you fake in return. And so keeping their dwindling pot of money going to facilitate their illusion that they still have control. They don't. This is being ran out of the City of London by the Crown. The Israelite Ra cult, Freemasons and Templars attached to the church. And for those new, Israelite is nothing to do with Israel, the country, or Jews. Those people have been duped into an Egyptian cult. Period. Crypto is ran and created by the CIA and NSA. As a near future show will show the deeper levels of that. And it involves data mining, cloning and harvesting on a massive scale. And it's an Orwell world on steroids. It is being pushed by clowns and agents of the CIA. The open source aspect of it is Robert David Steele. To date, this man has not contacted us to arrange a show. Personally, we don't expect him to, due to the fear of his and their narrative being torn to shreds. But we live in hope, and the door is always open. And then we read out the Facebook manifesto or white paper. White paper is indicative. White paper is what you wipe your arse with. Fitting in this case. Quite frankly, it was a beyond absurd article, riddled with contradictions, several lines of narrative repeated several times to fill the document out, which is suggestive it was thrown out in haste. In fact, we know it was. And was in response to actions taken recently that essentially cut them out of the game altogether. Oops. Connect the dots of the recent intel. An article that stated itself for those who can read and understand, not read and skip its content, which sadly far too many do, and this is why they get away with so much. It stated it cannot be done safely at this point, but we are working on it, and maybe in 5 years' time it can be done. Can you imagine walking into a bank to open an account tomorrow and the manager says, well, we'll take your money, but we cannot guarantee its safety. But no worries, maybe we will be able to do that in 5 years' time. It's absolutely absurd. But that is what they told you in the paper. They also stated they have got no funding for it, and was a polite way of saying we the people will be funding our own demise again. How nice of them. They then stated about this will improve the financial system, when Kim and the team have already done that to the current system, which they don't like, as now they don't control it. Again, a confirmation of what we've been saying. They stated they would like to be using bank deposits, which is our money, and securities, which is bonds, which are IOUs or debt notes. Well, no change there then, is it? A so-called brand new system that duplicates the previous failed model. How futuristic and progressive is that type of thinking? We know they are planning on using the birth certificate scam all over again. Again, not very original, are they? They also stated they are not basing it on assets, which means it's not backed or supported, which means it is a quantitative easing again, which means printing shit out like monopoly money, leading to inflation, which leads to extra tax. For those that don't know, inflation is a tax. All the main players that are in on it, the New York crew, the Crown, Rothschilds, Rockefellers, bankers, CIA, NSA, GCHQ and other agency-led groups, the Israelite cult, houses, Freemasons and the original Crusade type Templars, etc. The question is why? The reason why is supportive of what this show and Kim has been saying. They are doomed. And it's a full-on admittance that we've brought down their whole banking and currency systems. Also in their document that appeared to be written by a pre-high school child, they talk of decentralization. This should scare the shit out of a whole heap of elites, never mind the people. Yes, you can convince yourselves that you're all so important to the games and a player in their plans, but those plans failed. And actions by them against you will be severe and swift. By all means, sit back and wait for your demise. It will come. But at least we can say we told you and subsequently warned you. Out will go governments as we know it. Out will go central banks. Out will go several high street banks, and it will be swallowed in several big mergers soon. Watch and see. Out will go funding for the US military. They have served their purpose and the world is catching on to the role that they have been playing. Your replacement is already funded and further funding will be looted out of countries via the fake Paris Climate Agreement. That group is NATO, which is atom-based. Back to Egypt again. And what's NATO's sole aim? Defeat Russia and Iran. I wonder why. Listen to From Russia with Love 1 and 2. It's all there. So the self-appointed top-end clowns are now culling their herd, as Shane warned of back in 2015. This will be decided upon by the leading elites, and you will be sacrificed. After all, sacrifice is the name of their game, all the way back to Solomon, and in fact much further. Millionaires need not apply. You will be harvested and cut out. This is a billionaire's game now. Again, don't believe me? Just wait and see. Libra is a desperate attempt by desperate people who have lost the game and the plot. Big groups of so-called leaders and their organisations will get culled if this goes ahead because the clowns can no longer support it. Again, proving what we have said. The show was a fairly rollercoaster show that exhibited deep concerns for our future should this go ahead. We believe we will stop it, but that responsibility to do so lies with each and every one of you. You have a deep obligation to safeguard not only your future, but your children and grandchildren's future. Let us not be the generation who allowed tyrannical clowns who are deeply wounded, I might add, to throw us all into a nightmare world of epic proportions based purely on technology, not much of which has any real value to us as a species anyway. But the positive aspect shows and proves how far we have come in such a short period of time. Their financial energy harvesting machine ground to a halt in under 5 years. Their own document admitted that in great detail. Almost every paragraph confirmed it. But the biggest triumph is we have forced them to play their hand out in public. For years those plans remained hidden, the hidden hand of the dark magician. The Houdini-style mask ripped off and unveiled for all to see, at least to those who use their eyes to observe. That show, in essence, is another line in the sand moment in time. When the hidden was revealed in its full dark glory, the genie is out of the bottle. For years we never realised there was a bottle, never mind the genie inside, waiting to pounce on its unsuspecting and oblivious hosts. Now they have revealed their hand, and it's up to us to play our cards right, and we have to trump them, pardon the pun. We have to, not just him, we. Time is now to play our aces, and we will carry on in the background, playing them strategically. We have the time, they don't. We know it, and now they know we know it. And we can sit back and watch it all unfold, whilst making strategic hammer blows that facilitates their end. I'll be back on Circle of White Light with Randy and Alan on Sunday at somewhere around 2 o'clock Eastern Standard Time, and also later on in the evening with Michael Jacquin for an evening with Thomas. This has been the Truth, Honour and Integrity Show. My name's Thomas Williams. Bye for now.